Hi everyone. So we already know a lot of things about Illustrator. We already learned some advanced techniques. So let's put it to use. And the best way to do it is to design the logo. So when it comes to design the logo, there are I've divided the logo process into two groups. So one is strictly technical, like the technical rules for a logo, and the second one is design, so it's more flexible thing. So the first one, the technical aspect, I would not say that each of these is more important, but at least technical is much more easy to explain, because we've got some rules that we actually should stick to it. Of course, in almost every situation there could be a place like to bend the rules because it's design, so it's not always so strict, but mostly we have to stick to some stuff, and I will explain one by one the points that you are able to see, so you actually would be able to understand them correctly and to create your logo in a good way, at least from technical aspect of it. So the first step, flexibility and scalable version as vector graphic. So I think this is one of the most important things. So let me open some example in Adobe Illustrator. So this is achromatic version of the logo, so only in one color, and there are two versions of it. One is vector graphic, so if I select, you can see that, let me change the color to so you would be able to see. You can see anchor points, you can see the paths that are connecting, so it's a vector object, which means that it's scalable. And the second one, if I click on it, I've gotten information that it's transparent, CMYK, PPI, which means pixels per inch, pretty high, but this means that actually this graphic is rasterized, so it's not correct for a logo. So if we zoom in, we can see that this one still looks perfect, like we don't get any pixels. If we zoom in here, we are getting pixels. So if we would try to scale it up or down, this one would lose quality, this one will stay the perfect. So this is the first and main point. No rasterized graphic is allowed, and keep in mind that we need to use our logo on some small in some small design as well as on big media. So second step, I will connect it actually second and third step into one. So is achromatic version of a logo and bright and dark background color version. So let's go back to Illustrator for a moment. So this is the example. So what I've got the logo that was designed for one of my customers, and we've got three versions actually of it. So one that would work on a bright background, like in this case white background, one that would work on black background. Sometimes we can think about adding a stroke in here. I would not think it's necessary in this situation, but sometimes stroke may work pretty well. We've got some modification in font color just to make it readable. Sometimes you need to adjust the red and you need to make a few different adjustments. Sometimes it's necessary. If you got like really simple like achromatic logo, there is no problem with it, because let's bring it to front for a moment. Let's change color to white, and we've got one for bright background and one for dark background. So sometimes it's not a problem. But everything depends on your logo, so you should have one version that works on bright, one that works on dark, negative version, and the third one, this one is actually important, is achromatic version. So achromatic version means that there is only one color used in the logo, so in one of our tasks we can switch with one click to have any color with our logo. And as I zoom in, you can see that actually there are a few differences in how this logo looks compared to this one. So I've actually needed to repaint and even simplify more this cap that is visible in here, so we could see actually the same, it's the same style. We know that this is the same logo, but from the design point of view and technical point of view, there are some changes in it just to make it more readable, more simple, and to make it work as achromatic version. Because if I would like to use this one as an achromatic version, so let's just ungroup, let me grab the cap, let me change the font, not the font, let me change the color, and you can see like we are not seeing that this is a cap, so we are losing the shape of it. So the next step, our fonts should be converted to outline. So what does it mean and why we have to do it? So once again, let's switch back to Illustrator. So I've got two, let's say that this is some name of a company. I'm using yellow color because it shows us in the best possible way the paths, so they are visible. So one is font not converted to outline, and second is font converted to outline. So this means that these are of course the standard vector shapes. So if we would send the logo as Adobe Illustrator or EPS file to somebody, and someone would not have this font. Actually, Myriad Pro is kind of standard font, so probably everybody has it. But if, for example, I would, for some reason, I will have a different font, like, okay, even Helvetica is not a standard one. So if I would have Helvetica Round and I would send this font to somebody else, it would not work on their computer unless they have exactly the same font installed. So let me delete maybe this one. Let me duplicate it, right click and click on create outline. So right now this is font converted to outlines. So we are sure that actually our logo would look exactly the same on our computer and on somebody else's computer. So last step is stroke converted to fields. Unfortunately, I've made some mistake here. I will correct it. I would not re-record all the stuff that I done earlier, but I will at least correct this mistake. So, stroke converted to fill. All the strokes actually I should name it like this. Strokes converted to fills. So, what does it mean to us? Well, it's not necessary to do it. Like sometimes I'm not doing it on purpose because I know that there will be still use for strokes, but at some point it's actually it's a good technique to convert all the strokes to fill, so we would avoid some others people mistake. So it's a little bit safer that way. So let me use this as an example. So once again, we've got our logo with a stroke. Font is not converted to outline. So first, let's convert font to outline. So right now, everything looks fine. And it's even looking fine if I try to scale it down. Let me duplicate it. If I make it bigger, everything is okay. It's still looking the same. But the problem may occur if actually somebody has different settings in Illustrator. So if I go to Edit, Preferences, General, and I've got options Scale, Strokes, and Effects. And we do not know about this function, how people are using it. By default, I think in Illustrator it's off. And I always turn it on, but by default it may be off. So let's click on this checkbox to remove the Scale, Strokes, and Effects function. And look what will happen. So if I grab this logo and I will scale this down, it starts to look completely different. So what is happening? Actually, the thickness of a stroke stays the same no matter what the size of our object is. So we've got the thickness of our stroke is 4.5. If I make it smaller, so the whole object is smaller, but the stroke stays the same. So once again, if we are going to send our logo to somebody, for example, and they are going to print it on the t-shirts, and we never know how they will scale it. So maybe they will be like keeping in mind that we need to take a closer look on how the strokes are behaving, but it's just safer to get rid of the problem. So let me show you, because when it's obvious, it's not a problem. The problem is getting bigger when the difference is not so obvious. So I will select one of the logos. I will click on object, click on expand, and you can see like we've got yellow fill and red stroke. So I will just click OK. We've got no stroke at all. We've got two fills. So one fill is red and one fill is yellow. So if I grab those two logos and I will like change them a little bit. So right now, actually, this one is behaving correctly, but this one, like the change is subtle. It's still like it's incorrect logo at this point because this is a correct logo. This is incorrect because the stroke is a little bit too thick, and like you can say that there is a difference, but it's not so obvious. So somebody may not see it. So the difference is getting bigger once you scale it down even more. So just keep in mind, it's a good practice to convert the strokes to outlines. I would not say it's necessary. It's just a little bit safer way. So that was all the most important technical aspects. So those 5 points. So flexibility, always have achromatic version, like this is necessary. Bright and dark color background version, like sometimes you can have workaround if you got like your logo is kind of badge. You don't need to have a different version for different backgrounds because it's on a badge, like let's say Starbucks logo. Fonts should be converted to outline, and strokes should be converted to fills. So these are the most important technical aspects. The other aspects, the design side, well, it is much more difficult to explain, but I will try once again, like keep it really simple and compact, but give you the most important information. Also, how to approach designing the logo, how to do research, and so on. So one of the most important rules when it comes to logo is simplicity and readability. Simplicity does not always mean simple, although it's very often connected. So here are a few examples of a logo. Some of them are really simple, like FedEx and Amazon. I will be going back to them later. And even this one is very simple, but as you can see, there is like this tendency to simplify logos even more. Another example of it that is not included in here is Google. But of course, not every company, not to every company, this FedEx or Amazon style logos fits. Like so, sometimes, like when we've got sport teams, we can have much more complicated symbol because it's just something about the style that matches to what actually either company or a sports team is doing. So I will be going into details later, but even this, it's very readable, even if it's quite small. It's in a way it's simple. In a way, it's not a simple design, but it's scalable, and even small, it's still readable. So just keep in mind, like even the same thing in here, like. At some point, this logo small would not be readable, so they will just get rid of all those elements necessary, and only Heineken and Star would stay. But still, it's readable, it's scalable, and we can even go farther. Like I would not even mention too much about this one. This is a change. Like this is a new version of a logo, and as we can see, it's much more easy to read. Like this one, if you do not know the name already, it's hard to find whether it's A or maybe it's O. It's really messed up typography. So this is the reason why they simplify. The next example of a simplification is a New Balance. Like we can see how the N elements are changing. Like with each new version, there is less of those strokes. We still got this effect of motion blur, like it's so the NB is moving really fast, but even smaller, it's still much more readable than this one. So there is this tendency. I would not say that you always have to do your logo in this way, like to simplify it at maximum, because once again this will be we will be talking about it later. Everything depends on what kind of logo you are designing. Sometimes there is a place for much more complicated logo, but you always have to keep in mind that it should be readable. So like this one, like it's not super simple but it's super easy to read. Like this Sea Wolves is quite readable. The same with all the rest of the examples. And the next step is how to approach design, and like I would not be showing you examples, I would just mention a few words about it. So we've got like for me those two work the best, and mostly I'm working with typography. So I just type whatever kind of name I need to use in my logo. I just type it. I'm looking for different fonts and see whether some of them would work. Maybe it will give me some idea that I can change one letter to have some kind of symbol that will represent what I'm doing. So the typography is fine for me. And the second one is sketches. So just using pen and paper, you can draw some ideas and later try to introduce them into Illustrator. There is no one good way how to approach designing a logo. It's up to you. Depending on situation, I use both of them. Sometimes even for the same company I use those two approaches just to break from the pattern, so my logos would not look exactly the same. Okay, so the next thing is balance. So and this is kind of tricky one because it's not so easy to explain. It's sometimes something that you can like look at it mathematically, but mostly you should rather look at it just by the eye and judge it by yourself. So let me try to explain what I have in mind. So let's say we've got two logos, and at this point I am able to see some problems with them. Like I've just made some simple typography and some elements, but just to explain what balance means. So balance means that every object in your logo should be there because of reason. There should be a reason behind it, and the style and the position of it should be justified in a way. So we've got those two lines, and the problem with those two lines, like I can see already few problems with those two lines. So let's say that this would be our final logo. What we should do with those two lines to actually make it work good? Well, first I will zoom in what I think would work better. So maybe let me duplicate the first example and have the second one. So first, what would work better is if we have those lines exactly the same thickness like the thickness of the letters. So the easiest way would be just for a moment put it in here, and let's make them thicker. So if we are not able to match it perfectly, what we can do is we can click on Object, Expand. Let's click OK. So right now we've converted stroke to outline. We already know how to do it. Let's place it in this spot. OK. And let's grab this element to find the correct thickness. And placement also. So we will do exactly like this. So we can see that it has the correct thickness of the letter L, of the letter B, so it matches the font. So right now I will put it for a moment just in here. I will delete the line in the bottom, and I will duplicate the line in this line in here. So maybe we could put it in here. So right now, of course, I will convert font to outlines. So this is the one step. The second step is like probably we should have exactly the same space between top and bottom of the letters. So if I duplicate it and place it in here, so this rectangle should go exactly in this spot, so the space should be exactly the same. So just like those two corrections to give the logo a little bit more balance. Probably also this should end exactly on the letter E, and the same thing in here. I am not sure that I should do it right now, because there is one more thing. Spacing between the letters, and this is a tricky one. Like, if I look at this logo, like, I could say, okay, this was how the font was created, and I can leave it like this, but maybe I should ungroup it and just grab letter L and place it somewhere in here. I am able to actually compare those two elements, and I think this one looks better. Like the alignment of letter L in here works better. What I can do even more is I can try to grab those two. Maybe those two elements should be a little bit closer. Maybe not. Maybe it's not a difference. Like I said, it's not always mathematical difference, but sometimes it's just something that you can look with your eye and judge it by yourself. Like the different spacing between the letters sometimes would work better when you manually correct it, and sometimes it's not. So this is what I would call balance. But it's not always so obvious. Like the strokes is a obvious thing, but you can see the difference. Like this was not aligned, the spacing was different, the thickness of a line was different, everything was little bit by random, and this is much more balanced. And the second one is more obvious when it comes to balance, because at this point, like I could do it, I could try to do it and to match the balance, because everything, like the logo is moved, this typography with logo is moved a little bit to the right, so the balance is a little bit off, it's not symmetrical. I could try to use some guidelines to make things much easier to see, but guidelines are not necessarily always working. So well, let's even ignore them. So right now I've got two words. I will group them with Ctrl G, grab the second one, Ctrl G, to group them as separate words. So I've got two groups. I will select both of them and I will click alignment, and it moved it to the center. So for me it's fine, and in this situation I would say the balance is right now okay. So you can see the difference. So this is without the alignment and this is with alignment. So the balance is a little bit better, but this won't always work. This is something, once again, that you have to judge by yourself, whether like this whether the weight of the logo is centralized. Sometimes you don't want to be, sometimes you want to have something like this, and that's fine. But the most important thing is that nothing should be by accident placed. Like you should place everything very carefully, because most of the logos are super simple. So we can really like spend a lot of time on just balancing the things out. So making sure that all the elements fit together, that they are exactly the same style, that if we got something like this, we would not have a symbol that is like looking like it's handwritten. So balance is not always about the thickness of a line and about the weight, whether it goes to the right or to left, but also like to match the style together. So the only thing that I have a problem is, like, probably I would prefer to have it like I had before. So something like this would probably work better. So maybe something like this, so those two letters were connected. And another, I would say, problem that occurred that was not before, maybe not necessarily, like this part is too straight. So I would grab this, probably like it, maybe extend a little bit the Bezier curves. So right now this line was not so straight. So and everything that I showed you, I would called logo balance. So it's those small details that we have to be really careful about. It's a little bit hard to explain, especially if you don't use the examples. So maybe I would be able to help you much more with it when I see your logos. Maybe one more thing about, well, let's say it's kind of connected with logo balance. So I've got two examples. So one is this one with really simple circle and the text, and one we've got the same simple circle, but I've changed the font. And what I find imbalanced in here is that we've got different styles used. So we've got handwritten text, like it's a font, but it looks like it's handwritten, but this element is like perfect. It's not handwritten, so it's simply it's not matching the same style. So so this makes like look this element much more off than it is in this example. So just keep that in mind, that the style should match somehow one another. So maybe what we should do is we should correct the circle to match the style or typography, or the opposite. Okay, so let's just, for the sake of example, let's just try to match style of our logo to style of our font. I would not say that I will do it perfectly, but at least I would try. Okay, so first we've created just a line with a stroke. So what I want to do is I want to mimic this kind of style of the line on my line. So I've made the line with a stroke, and we already know the tool that will help us. I hope that some of you at least remember it. So sorry. So it's the tool, not Shape Builder. It was not working correctly because I clicked on the wrong tool. Sorry. It's the width tool. So if I grab it, I would be actually able to change how this line would behave. So I can make it thicker, thinner. I don't want to exaggerate too much. I think I'm exaggerating too much already, but like this should have been more like this. Maybe something like this. So you can see, so it's not so straight like it was before. And let's just duplicate the logo, the symbol, and let's add our profile, what we created in here. So this kind of profile, let's add it to our circle. So I am not able to add this because it's not available, but I can click on my line, I can click in here, and I can create new profile. I will click OK. So right now, if I go to bottom, I would have my element in here. So I think it's still not working great, because the difference should be more, the differences should be more obvious. So what can we do? We can try to adjust it even a little bit more and see actually whether it would work for us. So little bit more of the differences. Okay. So something like this. And once again, new profile. Let's click OK. Let's grab our circle and let's switch to this profile. Okay, so it's better. Let's make it thicker. So once again, the thickness will match a little bit more to our typography, maybe even something like this. Okay, and now it's still too perfect because the path is perfect circle. So we can grab it, maybe let's destroy it a little bit, like let's get rid of the perfection, because in our case it's just not doing good job for us. So right now it looks more like it's handwritten, so I can grab this. It should be even probably more distorted, but right now once again, we can grab those elements, align them together. So this is how we've matched the style. So we've got one this like perfect and simple style, and one this more like a handwritten style. So the font fits our design. So the next point is style match, and so the next point is style match, that we actually should take a closer look in. What I mean by that? Well, depending on what your company or your product represents, the logo should look different. So if we got this standard company, like, and once again, we've got this FedEx and Amazon logos examples, pretty simple. They will actually work almost with anything, but for this style of logo would not work for sport team. So if we got sport team, we can go with completely different approach. So we've got two examples of it. If we've got perfumes, probably we will have this kind of approach. If we have energy drink, once again, it will look completely different than maybe some healthy food for babies. So once again, your product or your service should be in a way represented in a logo. So this is an example. So we've got two beer brands in here. So one is craft beer, Brewdog, and one is like this standard big corporation beer. So this is very typical. Like you can find this kind of design almost in every country. So we've got Żywiec in Poland that looks almost exactly like Heineken, like with different symbols, but the styles is the same. But when we have this craft beer, they are having like completely different approach. Although they are using this same kind of style in a way that they've got shield, but it's worn out. Sometimes they have this standard approach, but you can see the much simpler, more modern typography. So although the product is the same, once again, it still represents a little bit different of approach. And the next point in here is actually I've put it in here by accident, achromatic version once again. So we've got achromatic version in here. So maybe I should not explain this as an example, but just to mention, because I think I know what I had in mind, that there are some, especially when it comes to brands like perfumes, there is this very big trend to have all the logos as achromatic, so you don't have to worry about the colors or anything. In our approach, I would like to see different approaches. So one of them, of course, could be achromatic version, but not only achromatic version. Okay, so the next example is avoid effects. So what I mean by that is a little bit connected with simplicity. So you should not use, I'm not saying always, but you should not use shadows. You should, even if we had shadow, it's like shadow like this. It's like separate layer. There are some, like, once again, if you know the rules, you can break them. But at this point, I think it would be much more easy to avoid any effects like shadows. Gradients are fine, but everything that will need a rasterized graphic would not work. So rather vector, simple graphic would be fine. So this is something that I just want to mention about it and show you like really quick examples. I will not go into details with it because this video will already be quite long. I think it will take over half an hour at least. And it's connected with balance. Maybe I should put those points right next to each other. So the golden ratio is one of the ways how to compose your image, your painting, and also your logo. So the golden ratio is this, what you can see. It's mathematically divided like to squares, just to show you maybe the focus points and how you should compose and organize your image. So how does it actually work when it comes to logo? so actually in this example we are not able to see the spiral, but let me show you another picture of it. So I've turned on the layer, so you can see, so this is the spiral, and everything is created here once again, so like by mathematics, let's say. So and this also creates the perfect proportions for us. So all those squares actually are in perfect proportions that we are able to use in our design. So if I would like to give you example from the real world, so this is Apple logo, and you can see we've got golden ratio in here, and these are the elements that are actually matching together almost perfectly to create the Apple logo. So it's not only random Apple, everything is like cutted through with the specific objects in mind that have perfect proportions. So this is like a very short like example of using golden ratio. Another is the Pepsi logo. So once again we've got circles that are actually in correct proportion, so it's not bended by accident. The size of this bend is actually designed, and the same thing when it comes to Twitter logo. So once again, not necessarily perfect, because like some of the parts are going outside, but generally you can see like these circles are exactly the same. They are cutted, but they are exactly the same. So if you want to find more details, there are some YouTube videos explaining how golden ratio works. Sometimes it's useful. You don't have to use it on your logo, but you can try experiment with it, and I think you will find it. Sometimes you will find it helpful. Sometimes also limiting, but it's always works in both ways. Okay, so the last point is inspiration and plagiarism. So don't be afraid to look at a lot of logo examples. Like, I think you should before you start to design your own, you should like look at hundreds of logos, look what you like, what you dislike, whether some of the techniques would work for your design or not. So inspire yourself, because it's a really nice thing to do. But like avoid plagiarism. So, but I think it's self-explanatory. Like, you can take an inspiration and do something completely different, or you can use take inspiration and do something super similar. It wouldn't always be a plagiarism, but sometimes it just be too close, and even if it's not the plagiarism, it just would not be anything unique. And a logo should always be little bit of had this little bit of uniqueness. And by knowing all those rules that I've showed you, like there are actually more of them than I expected, you also have to sometimes by purpose break some of them. So if I've mentioned avoid effects, there are some situations when you can actually use some effects. I think I have one example that I've made for my customers, the one with the cap, when there was a shadow actually done, but this is something that happens not too often. And once again, you've got a golden ratio. That doesn't mean that you have to use the golden ratio rule. Sometimes it may be useful, sometimes it's not. You've got the perfect balance. You want to perfectly balance the logo. But name of your company is unbalanced and it's doing some strange things. I don't know. So for sure you won't be focusing to balance your logo perfectly. Like some asymmetry would for sure you will find some place for asymmetry. So in the next video I will try to explain what we need to do on our classes.